I got a 661 that needs to be tore down for a rebuild. Has a crankcase issue. I'm taking this opportunity to do this tear down to show more of the uses of my vise. I am going to go over a few things as I go. I don't know how much I'll talk in here, but the difference of using a vise versus just rolling a saw around on a bench. A lot of aspects are hard to do without a vise, and removing a clutch on a larger saw is one. And a lot of guys like to use an impact. I used to, I don't anymore. And I don't use a piston stop. I've seen broken pistons, done it myself. We use rope. It seems to be the best of 30 years plus of doing this. That's what works the best. Impacts put stresses on a crankshaft that you don't want. This is a failed crankshaft. I can turn this anywhere I want to. But when you're hammering on the end of the crank with an impact, every time that hits, it's turning or attempting to turn this crankshaft like this. Bang, 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 bang. It's trying to twist this crankshaft. That in its own is a bad aspect. But it's also hammering on your bearings, rod bearings. And that, of course, isn't good either. So, some are the reasons. Doesn't matter to me. I know there's plenty of people out there that are going to say, I've been using an impact for years, and I haven't had a problem. And like I said, I used to use them too, but I don't anymore. And to take this clutch off, tight, right? And you gotta get an extra tool to put in your tool, get some extra leverage. I don't know how you do this on a bench. It's hard enough to do here. But that's a lot of torque, and it's taken off safely. So that's one of the hardest things there is to get off of a saw. And, like I said, this is about the uses of a vise, the strength of the vise. And for a complete tear down and rebuild, I don't know that there's anything any better out there. So we're going to go through the whole teardown. I was chasing an air leak, so and I found the problem, and it's a crankcase issue. So it's got to get tore down, and all the way to the bottom. So that's what we're going to do. The whole thing. Probably take, I don't know, half an hour or so. Get it apart. Part of it's apart. That's, like I said, I was doing an air test on it. And to, find our air leak problem. And so part of it's apart already. Rope that I use. And this ain't specific to, just showing you how to tear down a 661. That's, really not what the video is about, but, the use of the vise. There's lots of people out there will go over tear downs and that kind of stuff, and I need to evaluate the saw as I go, and you know what it's going to need. Definitely need some clutch work. There's a missing screw, an oil pump. Other one was loose. So we have one missing screw in there. It's obviously done some damage in here as well. Doesn't look too serious, but obviously that screw's been banging around in there for a while. There's a lot of positioners out there on the market, you know. I have bought one that I've had for many, many years. And it works fine. It's a little smaller cast iron type thing that's kind of similar. It's kind of what I based this off from. I don't really use that one anymore. I like this one better. This particular customer likes these shields, so skid plate, whatever you want to call it. He puts them on most of his saws. I found on the 661s it's easier to just take the handlebar right off. It comes apart a little easier that way. Usually I leave the handlebar on the tank on most saws, but a little easier on this one if you take it off. I have two of these vices set up in my shop, and I have one on the other end of the shop. I usually have one here for always doing these rebuilds. I'll take the saw apart, evaluate what it needs as I take it apart, and then we go from there. And then the other one that I have set up for where I do my porting at. Always look for issues as it comes apart. Anything that's broke or wrong or not quite right. Teardowns don't take that awful long. This saw was ported brand new. It's got over 600 hours on it, 700 hours. No complaints. This has been a good one here. So he's got like 8 of them. Well, they get rotated quite a bit. He also runs Schaefer's oil, same as I do. I recommended it. He's been using it. We got a few little scuff lines in here on the piston. But it doesn't show much for wear. I'd have to go back and look in my records to see if we ever put one in it. It's possible. Yeah, this one's more than likely had a piston put in at least once in its life. Doesn't look too bad. There's one screw in the case. I have to take it back off to get to. It's a lot easier to do this kind of work on a saw with a vise. You know, it's sitting still, you're not chasing it. Vise is solid. Nothing wiggles around with it. My old splitter is being pretty tough shape. I modified it, made it stronger, made it work on more things, and it's got to be going on 40 years old. Been abused. And I know a lot of guys pound places apart too. You know, they just start pounding on stuff and beating on it with a hammer, and you know, that's not the way it's done, you know. I fixed a lot of crankshafts, straightened a lot of crankshafts for people that took things apart the wrong way, not having the proper tools. The proper tools just makes it easy. So there it is. Down to the bottom of the matter. You know, we have a complete crankcase failure here. It broke right through here. Never seen one break there before. That's a new one. Broke through the bearing pocket and right through the case through here. I'll grab the camera and show it to you. And this one is cracked in its spot that they've been cracking in. So, you know, talk about why it's failing. Well, it is heavily ported. We're pushing the compression on these for this particular customer kind of high. He wanted everything he could have out of these saws. And I, you know, kind of told him we'd be seeing some failures if we, you know, push too high. And yep, he said that's okay. So, we've seen a few of these crack cases. And the solution is to reduce our compression. But I haven't seen this one. I haven't seen one crack here yet. Right through there, you can see the crack. Goes down the side here quite a ways. It's not repairable. I can't weld these up. You know, it goes into the bearing pocket. It's all the way. It's all the way to the bearing pocket there. And then on the other side, of course, right through here, up through in that bolt hole. And I've seen a few of those on this side. So, but, you know, the crank is holding up just fine. There's no bluing, there's no, you know, nothing wrong with the crankshaft here at all. The failures in the crankcase itself is what's failing. So why do we have crankcase failures? Well, everybody out there wants a lighter saw. They want the best power to weight ratios. And to get that, they got to take metal away from something. And so for the most part over the years, it's been the crankcase. We can't make a lighter crank because then the crank won't hold up. Cylinder takes up a certain amount of space. We can't really take much off of that. You know, piston, nuts, bolts, screws, things that have weight, you know. And then of course the crankcase. So let's lighten the crankcase, right? And this is not just 661s. It's not just steel. It's everybody out there's having these kind of issues with lighter crankcases. You know, we run into the weak points. We run into issues. Everybody's going to find those issues at some point in time. And this is the results. And it's just not enough metal in there to keep these things together. So, but mainly this is all about my vices, you know. Doing this job, doing this kind of work without a vice, I really wouldn't want to do it, you know. And I showed that these handles are adjustable. You know, all you had to do is pull it out and you can spin it anywhere you want it. And then of course it loosens the nut. So them part of the price of why these vices cost so much. I get these plates fairly cheap. It's a cutout from a manufacturer, and that's really cheap. This is 2-inch, inch and a half, 2-inch OD, inch and a half ID, bushing stock. The next piece is inch and a half OD, 1-inch ID bushing stock, and then this is 1-inch pipe. Everything has got to be machined to fit, and to get a good, nice, tight, snug fit. So you don't have a loose rattle thing here by putting two pieces of pipe together, because two pieces of pipe don't truly fit together nicely. So these handles are about 35 bucks a piece. And all of the machining and milling that goes into to making every aspect of these. It takes a lot of time, you know. I got to turn them down from a larger size to a smaller size because they're about 8 inches in diameter when I get them. And so there's a lot of milling, a lot of work involved, a lot of welding, cutting these slots, you know, deburring everything. This is you know, made notch to fit like up to an 880 steel, you know, and then this groove is made smaller so it holds the bar better, but this holds the shoulders of the bolts. And then this is notched out here for chain adjusters and stuff. And I leave this little lip on here because it does add a little strength to all of this, to leave that little lip on there instead of just milling it thin. So it adds a little strength, almost like a piece of angle iron, you know. And then I mill it out thin, and that's on there for strength, and it clears the chain adjusters. I've enjoyed these. This one I'm probably going to cut the tail off the back. Personally, I don't care to have it on there, and I usually have it adjusted back as far as I can out to the front of my bench. That's where I like them. I leave it on there in case somebody wants to adjust it out further off the bench, or have this set back further in the bench. You know, they do stick out past the bench unless you turn it. You know, if you turn it, then it doesn't. That's how it usually sets over here. And it's tall enough to where if you have a saw in there with chain brake and everything, even an 880, if you swing it over here upside down, the saw upside down, it will still swing over the bench. So that's the height part of it. And for me, it's a relatively comfortable height with the height of my bench. But you can adjust these up, you know, I don't know, maybe 4 inches. If you're running a lower bench and want it taller. So, or if you want it lower, you can cut some off the bottom of it and it will drop up in here further, so it will come down even lower if you'd want it lower. I try to build them to give you some options for heights and lengths and all that kind of stuff, and anything that's in your way you don't want or want to modify it, you certainly can. But that's the main thing on the vise. We'll have to see what the customer wants to do about this crankcase problem. He'll likely put a new case in it. The rest of the saw is in pretty good shape, so I assume that's what we'll end up doing. And I'll have to do a little something to possibly reduce the compression a little bit. Try to get back away from this issue. But totally up to him. I just do what the customers want, you know. So like I said, this ain't the first one we've seen a broken case on. But we've been modifying our combustion chamber a little bit since we saw this. We're going to start reducing the compression, and from this point forward on, any new ones that he brings me to do will be a little less compression than these. So I'm not trying to scare anybody with this. This is the only customer I have that we have this issue with. He runs the living snot out of these saws. He doesn't run them easy, he runs them really hard. And he's really not concerned too much about some of these failures. I mean, he cuts 1.5 million, 2 million board feet a year, all by hand, and all hardwood. So these saws get run hard. And you know, I'm sure he'd like to have them last a little longer. But when we're pushing things out into the limits or past the limits, this is what we find. And we don't know these until we don't find these issues until we put a lot of hours on a saw. Like I said, this one's got over 600 hours on it, I think. Close to 700 hours before this showed up. So I think that's somewhere where the other ones were too, that we had cracks in them. So it's not like, you know, that's a lot of hours really for a saw. Homeowner is never going to see that kind of hours in a saw. A novice probably won't. An arborist maybe, but it'll take a few years, you know. But most saws are thrown away in a year. Logger saws, a year and a half. Most of those saws are wore out and are replaced, parted out, scrapped. That's just common. A lot of those are rebuildable, but they do have an awful lot of hours on them. So, but this one came apart nice. Like I said, the crank looks good, cylinder looks good. The saw is not beat to hell. That's one thing. He does not beat them up. He doesn't smash them. He doesn't bend handlebars. He doesn't break those kinds of things. That they just run hard. Not abused, run hard. So I'm pretty sure he'll put this one back together with what we've done in the past. But I love my vices. I know the guys that have them like them. That's probably about the most I've got to say about them. I use mine every day, every saw. They get put in a vise, and this, you know, it just makes life so much easier. So if you're in the business of rebuilding saws, I'd recommend it. Novice, somebody that's really not going this far, you know, maybe doesn't need one. But they are handy and they are nice. So Anyways, till the next one.